On the night of November the 20th, 1963, the President of the United States sat down in the small private theater inside the White House and watched a film that had not yet been released in his own country. It was a spy picture. The next morning, he flew to Texas. The day after that, he was killed in Dallas. The film was From Russia with Love. It was the last movie John F. Kennedy ever saw, and it only existed because of him. There is one more thing. The 2 minutes of that film everyone remembers, the 2 minutes people still call the best fight ever put in a spy movie, had something deliberately taken out of it, something you would only notice if somebody pointed it out. Nobody pointed it out in 1963. I am going to. 4 people matter here. Sean Connery, 33 years old, 1 film into playing James Bond, and not yet the most famous man on the planet, Robert Shaw. A London stage actor who very nearly turned this job down, and who you already know from something else entirely. We will come back to him. Pedro Armendariz, the biggest leading man in Mexican cinema, cast as Bond's ally in Istanbul and carrying something to work every single day that nobody on that set could do anything about. And Ian Fleming, who wrote the book, and who was about to receive the single greatest piece of free publicity in the history of publishing, from a man he had met exactly once. To start with a magazine. On March the 17th, 1961, Life magazine ran a profile of the new president that included a list of his 10 favorite books. Most of them were what you would expect from a Harvard man. Histories, biographies, a study of the American presidency, and sitting in among them was a paperback thriller about a British spy called From Russia with Love. The effect was immediate. American readers went looking for the book their president liked and then bought the rest of them. Ian Fleming became the best-selling crime author in the United States on the back of one line in a magazine. Fleming knew exactly what had happened to him. In 1962, he wrote to Robert Kennedy, the Attorney General, thanking the family for what they had done to his sales. That letter still exists. It is in the Fleming collection at Indiana University, and you can go and look at it. The 2 men had met once in Washington in 1960 through a mutual friend named Marion Leiter, who years earlier had handed Kennedy a copy of Casino Royale and told him to read it. So when the 2 men who produced the Bond films, Albert Broccoli and Harry Saltzman, needed a follow-up to Dr. No, they did not go to the next book in the series. They went to the book the President of the United States had endorsed in print. United Artists doubled the budget to $2 million. Sean Connery got a $100,000 bonus on top of a $54,000 salary, and a novel Fleming had privately considered making the last James Bond story he ever wrote became instead the film that turned Bond into an industry. Pedro Armendariz. He had made more than 100 films. He was a genuine star in Mexico and had worked for John Ford in Hollywood. In From Russia with Love, he plays Ali Karim Bey, the head of British intelligence in Istanbul, and he is the warmest thing in the picture. Every scene he is in, he is enjoying himself. He was terminally ill the entire time. Armendariz had cancer. You will see it claimed that he got it filming The Conqueror near a nuclear test site in Utah. It is a story that gets repeated everywhere, and it does not hold up. The cancer rate among that cast and crew is broadly in line with the national rate for a group that size in that era. He was simply a man who got sick. He knew it was terminal, and he took this job because it paid, and because the money would go to his wife and his family after he was gone. The production knew. The director, Terrence Young, rearranged the entire shooting schedule to film Armendariz's scenes first, before he got any weaker. When the pain got bad enough that he could not be on his feet, Young stood in for him in the wide shots himself. So did a double. He finished his scenes. He flew to London and recorded his dialogue in post-production, and the sound editor working with him, Norman Wanstall, said afterwards that he had never seen professionalism like it. In June of 1963, in a Los Angeles hospital, Pedro Armendariz died. He was 51. The film he had worked through the pain to finish opened 4 months later. Which brings me to Robert Shaw. He read the screenplay and turned it down. He thought it was rubbish. His wife, the actress Mary Ure, told him to read it again and take it. And he did. Then he took it more seriously than anyone expected. Shaw already knew Connery from the London stage. They had the same agent and a competitive, needling friendship. Terrence Young gave Shaw extra time before shooting to physically remake himself, and Shaw spent 2 hours a day in training, some of it in Istanbul alongside Turkish wrestlers. The rivalry did not stay in the gym. According to Connery's wife at the time, Diane Salento, Shaw challenged Connery to a foot race in Turkey. Shaw prepared for a week and turned up in proper running shoes. Connery, who had done nothing at all, turned up in heavy work boots. Shaw took the early lead. Then the ground turned rocky, the boots started winning, and Connery walked away with it. But there was a problem no amount of training could fix. Red Grant is supposed to be Bond's physical equal, the one villain in the series who might actually be able to kill him. Robert Shaw was 5'10". Sean Connery was 6'2". So in most of their face-to-face close-ups, Robert Shaw is standing on a wooden box. That is the whole trick. There is no effect, no lens, no clever angle. The most physically intimidating villain in the history of the franchise is a shorter man on a crate, acting so well you never once question it. And if you have been trying to place him this whole time, here it is. 12 years after this, Robert Shaw sat down in the cabin of a fishing boat, scratched a fingernail down a blackboard, and told two men about a ship called the Indianapolis. Red Grant is Quint from Jaws. Now the fight. The confrontation between Bond and Grant in the sleeping compartment of the Orient Express is routinely called the best fight in the entire Bond series, and it is roughly 2 minutes long. Terrence Young rehearsed it for 2 days with Connery, Shaw, and the stunt team, and they got so precise that in the finished cut, only a single shot of the stunt doubles was used. It is almost impossible to spot. Young made 2 choices inside that compartment that do most of the work. He has Grant shoot out the light so the whole thing plays in a sick blue half-dark. Then he has an arm go through the window which lets the noise of the train pour in. And that is the point, because here is what was taken out. There is no music. Nothing. In a film with a John Barry score in a franchise built on that score, the biggest sequence in the picture plays with no music underneath it at all. What you hear instead is the track Under the Wheels, the wind through the broken glass, and 2 men hitting each other in a space too small to swing properly. Almost every one of those sounds was built afterwards by Norman Wanstall and his team, and exaggerated well past reality. And it still does not sound fake. It sounds like it hurts. That decision is why the scene has outlived everything around it. Without a score telling you when to be frightened, you have to decide for yourself. And the fight stops feeling staged. Nobody plays music during a real fight. 2 years later, Norman Wanstall won an Academy Award for his sound work on Goldfinger. The first Oscar the James Bond series ever won was not for acting or writing or design. It was for noise. There is a scene in Istanbul where a Bulgarian assassin escapes his apartment by climbing out through a hatch hidden in a giant billboard, and the hatch is the open mouth of the actress Anita Ekberg. Karim Bey shoots him as he comes out. It is one of the most quoted images in the film. In Fleming's novel, that billboard is not for a Bob Hope comedy. It is a poster for the 1953 film Niagara, and the mouth the assassin crawls out of belongs to Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe died in August 1962, 8 months before the cameras rolled on this film. So the billboard had to change. The production designer, Sid Kane, saw an opportunity. Broccoli and Saltzman had exactly one other film in cinemas that year, a comedy called Call Me Buona, starring Bob Hope and Anita Ekberg. They put their own poster on the wall, complete with their own names, and had the camera pan slowly across it. An assassin dies climbing out of an advertisement the producers took out for themselves. It is the cheekiest shot in the film, and it is only there because a real woman had died 4 months earlier. The screening, which brings us back to a room in Washington. From Russia with Love opened in London in October 1963. It did not open in the United States until May of 1964, 6 months after the assassination. So when Kennedy watched it on the night of November the 20th, he was watching a film almost no American had seen. A private screening in a small theater of a movie made because of something he had said about a book 3 years earlier. The historian Arthur Schlesinger, his special assistant, is the only guest recorded in the room. And there is one more detail, and I think it is the strangest thing in this entire story. Between 1961 and 1963, Kennedy watched 81 films in that theater. Foreign pictures, new releases, whatever came through. The very first film he ever ran in it, when the room was new, was The Misfits. the last film Clark Gable ever made, the last film Marilyn Monroe ever completed. Two people who were already dead by the time he sat down to watch this one. He opened that theater with the final work of two Hollywood legends. He closed it with a spy film that existed because of him, that his own country would not see for another 6 months, and whose most famous scene had its music stripped out so that two men fighting in the dark would sound like something that could actually happen to you. Then he turned off the projector and flew to Texas. Where does From Russia with Love rank for you among the Bond films? And which one is your personal favorite? Tell me in the comments. And if you saw this one in a cinema back in 1963 or 1964, I would especially like to hear about that. If you want more stories like this one, subscribe, and I will see you on the next one.